Andretti is still one of the most popular topics when it comes to F1 and its expansion, but nothing has been officially announced yet. With the F1 team owners and principals being very much against the sport expanding with an 11th team being present on the grid, they've done something that Andretti will very much dislike and label yet again as a dirty game from Mercedes and the rest of the grid. However, a very interesting option has entered Andretti's mind, and it seems like he's ready to take the strike back to Wolff and the company. Ever since 2017, the F1 sport has been under the ownership of Liberty Media, a USA-based corporation that has seen a true expansion of the sport in terms of popularity and tracks. It's evident that the sport is currently witnessing interest like never before, with the 2023 season visiting 23 tracks on almost every continent of the world, with the exception of Africa and of course Antarctica. With increased popularity in the fan base, however, comes increased popularity in the participation, and there are some rules that have remained the same since the day they were set up, such as the dilution fund in 2020. With a price tag of $200 million, Andretti had no trouble affording to enter the sport. However, team principals like Steiner and Wolff expressed their anger towards the FIA regarding the dilution fund and how its value is very low. Remember that back in 2020, the sport struggled to conclude a calendar for the season given the COVID-19 impact. And if the F1 executives were told that they would experience what they're experiencing right now, thanks to Drive to Survive, they would have signed the paper sheet by all means. Now, it seems like the team principals are ready to enjoy the expansion of the sport's popularity and harvest the fruits that come with it, but they aren't ready to actually give up a piece of the pie. The sport's popularity has primarily grown in the United States, and as its popularity grows, it's unavoidable that US investors will want to participate in it as well. After all, it would be the best way to generate more revenue from the United States aside from the fan base purchasing merchandise and attending race weekends. That's why Andretti is so persistent about entering the sport, and as of now, he's checked all of the boxes that have been given to him by the FIA. And rest assured that the governing body of the sport hasn't made it easy on the former F1 champion's son when it comes to completing every aspect of funding a new team to join the already existing 10-team grid. Still, team principals aren't ready to see Andretti participate in the sport, which is why they've already lobbied the FIA in terms of raising the dilution fund. As Steiner said, he believes that the fund is very low and needs to be increased immediately, but the amount that the team principals are currently asking for is abnormal: $600 million. This is 3 times the amount that Andretti is willing to pay right now, and it's clear that this is a demotivational move for Andretti and his F1 ambitions. What seems like an even crazier option by the team principals is that the $600 million fund was the lowest sum proposed by them, and the dilution fund could go much higher. It's obvious that Formula 1 is the most elitist sport, and the fact that there are only 10 teams participating from 2016 onwards speaks for the level of elitism involved. If this is the truth, then rest assured that Andretti will definitely not consider entering Formula 1 under any given circumstances. But there has been an interesting turn of events regarding the future of AlphaTauri. While the Italian squad was considered a safe bet for the future in terms of existing as a team, the new leadership of Red Bull decided that the team was just costing them money without actually bringing any value to the senior team for quite some time. Right now they have Verstappen, and AlphaTauri, or more precisely Toro Rosso back at that time, did its job of providing the world champion with a solid ground to learn the basics of Formula 1. However, with Norris available from 2025 onwards and young talents who aren't part of Red Bull, one can't help but wonder, is AlphaTauri really bringing any value to Red Bull? In the 2020 and 2021 seasons, the Italian squad had some strong finishes, with Gasly winning his first career race win and climbing on the podium in Azerbaijan. However, Gasly is now gone, and Red Bull isn't likely to pursue signing Nick De Vries or Yuki Tsunoda anytime soon at Red Bull. But with Andretti knocking on the door of entrance, it seems like we're more than ready to see the American team enter F1 by completing a buyout. It's definitely something that would suit Andretti, because this was the first option that he tried out when it came to entering Formula 1. However, back then teams weren't willing to sell their shares to him. Apart from AlphaTauri, Andretti also tried to complete a buyout on teams like Williams, Haas and McLaren, but it didn't work out in his favour. Now, Andretti is definitely not the only individual that wants to participate in Formula 1 with his own team, and he'll face fierce competition if Red Bull decides to sell AlphaTauri. There are two sides that are ready to complete a buyout as well, High-Tech GP and Mumbai Racing, with the former having strong links to Red Bull from the past. Remember that High-Tech serves as a breeding ground for Red Bull talent, with Liam Lawson being the latest in the long list of superb drivers that graduated from this academy. On the other hand, you have Mumbai Racing, a company owned by Indian billionaire who owns the Mumbai Falcon Racing team, which competes in Formula Regional Middle East and Formula 3 Asia. The competition is fiercer than ever, and Andretti has found himself in a situation in which he may not be competitive enough to fight. Sure, he has the most knowledge in terms of racing, but he's definitely not the best choice for the sport in terms of revenue and value. This is something that's been questioned by Wolff, Horner and many other team principals, and we're yet to see whether he'll win the bidding war against these multi-millionaire tycoons. As Horner said, in this sport, it ultimately boils down to who's going to pay the dilution fund. And now that every team principal has agreed that it should be no less than $600 million, Andretti is definitely going to be furious at F1 teams for what they're trying to set him up for. But on the other hand, F1 team principals need to be very careful to not allow a team owner that will only be present due to the money influx, a scenario that would absolutely destroy the competitiveness in the sport. When talking about the 11th team, Horner said, "As with all these things though, it ultimately boils down to, well, who's going to pay for it? If you introduce another 1 or 2 teams, you dilute the value of the current 10 franchises, which of course teams, particularly down towards the bottom end of the grid, have got a very inflated inherent value at the moment. I hope a solution can be found. What would be cleaner would be if they were able to take on the existing teams or franchises." Now, it's not a miracle that from 2026 onwards, the dilution fund will be much higher than the current $200 million that is in place now, which is one of the reasons why Andretti wants to enter the sport in 2025 and run one season under the current engine formula. But the existing teams are pushing for the dilution fund to be changed in the 2025 season as well, as agreed in the current Concord, despite the entry bid process having already gotten underway. With Wolff and Mercedes being the leaders of this infamous pack, one couldn't help but wonder, was Ben Sulayem in the right all along? The last thing the sport wants is to scare away all potential investors by overestimating the sport's worth. And they must understand that, at the end of the day, the sport would not have reached the magnitude it has today if it hadn't been for the increase in popularity in the United States. At certain points in the USA, F1 is even more popular compared to NASCAR and the rest of the USA characterized competitions, such as the IndyCar 500. Now, if they want to throw all of that away in terms of playing the jacks here, that's their choice. But the risk of F1 reverting to its old ways is always present, which is why Andretti's entry into F1 should be viewed from a different perspective. So with that being said, what do you think about Andretti being driven away by the rest of the team's principals? Do you think that the dilution fund will reach $600 million before 2026? Let us know in the comments down below.